The average person in India is responsible for approximately
2 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year.
The average person in China is responsible for approximately
8 tonnes of carbon dioxide each year.
The average person in the Isle of Man is responsible for around
16 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year.
We're in deep trouble at the moment because half the world's population understands what's going on and the other half don't care. And I'm afraid amongst the half that don't care are a lot of politicians. Two generations that slipped by have left a real mess for today's children to sort out. We are in a very, very serious situation, and it's time we all woke up.
The Earth's temperature has risen by about 1.2 degrees since the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Climate change is a significant problem. We've never seen anything in terms of temperatures rising like this in geological past.
Do you know, it's almost disheartening that 30 odd years ago when I was in the university, we knew climate change was coming. And I think in years to come, and it's already started, the energy companies will be judged as harshly as we judged the tobacco companies for carrying on selling cigarettes, even though the link to lung cancer was absolutely clear. They have known about the change that they've been driving since the early 1970s and then into the 80s as well, and they have systematically hidden that information.
Human activities release more than 130 times the amount of CO2 emitted by volcanoes.
One of the problems that we have on the Isle of Man is that compared to our nearest neighbour, the UK, we have less people here that actually believe in the impact of climate change. We have less people here that believe that we can actually do anything about it as well. This was a study that was recently conducted earlier this year, 2021. Now, we do have a challenge here in that we need to reach people and explain to them what's happening. We need to inform people and tell them, hey, look, this is happening.
If all the polar and Greenland ice caps melt,
the sea level will rise 60 to 70 metres.
So I guess we're presented with a situation. What if we're wrong about climate change? What if 99% of scientists are wrong? What if every global scientific body is incorrect? What if we just make a better world for absolutely no reason? Because even if climate change wasn't real, these environmental solutions are still something that we have to invest in.
climate change could stop the Gulf Stream's circulation.
And the Isle of Man will become much colder.
I think the Isle of Man is in a very strong position to go green. We have a lot of autonomy, we have a lot of connection as individuals to nature because we've grown up in this incredible place. But I think at the moment we've made a lot of plans and we've said a lot of things, but I don't think we've taken a lot of action in terms of moving towards a greener Isle of Man. And that is the next step. I think individuals, you can see all around the island, individuals and groups are making really, really concerted efforts to try and make things more green. But as of yet, we've not had that full societal push for the ability to make those green choices.
I would say the Isle of Man, in its journey to go green, we are at probably the start. The start of real change, I would say. There's a lot of work that's gone in the background. And when I say work, I don't mean a government department doing work. I mean community engagement. I mean knowledge. I mean information about education. In the end of the day, change is not going to come from a top-down approach from the Isle of Man government or the Isle of Man Parliament passing a law and everything being resolved. It's going to come from the bottom up. It's going to come from citizens in the Isle of Man making change.
The Isle of Man still discharges up to 2 million litres of untreated sewage every day.
You have to understand, I think the biggest thing that people never really grasp is there's more photosynthesis and more oxygen production goes on in the seas than goes on land. And so that very, very basic, the algae that live in the sea are so fundamental to the health of the planet. But as we see increased levels of carbon dioxide and the water becomes more acidic, we will start to lose some of that plankton from the water as it becomes more acidic. Warmer water doesn't hold as much oxygen, so that's another issue that we're facing.
There are around 65,000 vehicles on the Isle of Man.
We have just followed a very, very short-sighted policy for 40, 50 years that has prioritised cars over absolutely everything. And I grew up in a street where I was probably the only resident who left the street by any means other than the private motor car for decades. It was only the dog walkers who actually left the street on their feet. We've got ourselves into a situation now where the residents down here can't find parking spaces. Suburbia streets are just lined with cars and vans. So we've gone down this cars route, and what we have to remember is that in the Isle of Man, about 80% of all journeys are less than 3 miles. And that means there's immense potential for active travel.
Animal agriculture is responsible for
35 to 40% of methane emissions.
So the role agriculture plays in a more sustainable future is huge. I think we don't fully understand just the potential that we've got, but it's massive. We do emit carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide equivalents, but we can't have the island looking like it does. We can't improve biodiversity without livestock. We need livestock to graze the ground. And through that grazing action, we actually capture more carbon, improve soil health, retain more water, capture more water, we improve the environment. There's more insects, there's more biodiversity. Where it'll go, I think, and the potential that agriculture has got is huge. We just need to switch our mindsets to from being primary food producers to being soil managers, and I think we'll see a huge amount of benefit in our farming practices through that.
The average household produces 2.7 tonnes of CO2 in just heating alone.
22% of all our carbon emissions come from our buildings, from our housing, and as recent surveys have shown that our housing is quite a way behind other jurisdictions in terms of their insulation and in terms of their energy efficiencies. So what that means is we're losing or having to burn a lot more gas, a lot more electricity just to heat our homes.
If the whole world had emissions equivalent to the average person in India, we would have 48 years until the point of no return.
If everyone on the planet lived like us,
we would have only 4 years
before we reach the point of no return.
I think the climate emergency is definitely real, and I think that the real key decision makers need to be taking that into account now, not in 5 years' time. I think targets like 2050 are too far away. I think we need to be aiming for sooner than that to make a real difference and really turn things around. We've done it before with CFCs and the ozone layer. We can do it again.
Approximately 28 million hectares of forest are cut down each year. That's the same as one football field.
Every second.
Of every hour.
Of every day.
The Miriveg plantation will offset current emissions
of only 45 to 55 Manx residents, but only when the trees are fairly large.
But I think then the big problem has come that we've relied on politicians to come up with the solutions. And for most politicians, you are only as good as the time until your next election. And that means that you tend to take more of a short-term view, and taking the bigger steps that we clearly need to take now to avert absolute climate disaster is going to take some bravery.
The Earth was last this warm
125,000 years ago.
Well, I've always had a love of wildlife and the natural environment. Humans are part of biodiversity. We're part of nature. We get everything from the natural world. Our food, clothes, everything we buy, everything we consume. The global temperature is rising. The fact that it's rising is an issue, but the point is that it's rising very quickly, much more rapidly than any of the other changes we've had over thousands, if not millions of years. That is affecting all species, not just humans, and it's happening too quickly for evolution, so wild species won't be able to evolve in the time required, and species won't be able to move either, to move further north away from the heat. So species are dying, becoming extinct, but also the numbers of individuals of species are going down. And this means that there's no resilience in the wild habitats for recovery.
100% of baby sea turtles have plastic in their stomach.
I really want to do something for the Isle of Man where everyone could have like a curbside collection. This should be easy for everyone to do. It's been quite refreshing to see that a lot of people are already recycling. What I'm hoping is this kind of gives people the opportunity who can't recycle because they can't get down to the tip, or just want to make it easier for people. And I just think it will really encourage people to recycle more and reduce our island's waste.
I think what we've done as an organisation, as volunteers, our little organisation has done a really good job. Set an example which is being watched by other people around the world, so there's no reason why we can't just continue to do that. And in other areas, such as renewables and solar energy and ground source heat pumps and all that sort of thing. You know, why don't we just try and set an example and let the rest of the world watch what we're doing?
The UK has seen a 73 times increase in its amount of wind power over the last 20 years.
By building wind turbines and achieving energy independence, not only do we create a more resilient country, we also ensure that a majority of the money we spend on energy remains within the local economy. By creating a better transport system, not only do we make things safer, but we can also eliminate many forms of poverty. By investing in affordable, sustainable housing that's really well insulated, we can eliminate the 15% of our population who live in fuel poverty, right? So at the end of the day, solutions to climate change make life better.
When I was working in the renewable energy industry with a lot of Europeans, they were always amazed that living in such a windy place, the Isle of Man hadn't done anything towards having any onshore or offshore wind resources. And it's really embarrassing. I mean, if you look at other nations such as Costa Rica and Tasmania and these places, they're carbon neutral or net exporters of renewable energy now, and here we are on the Isle of Man, one of the windiest places on earth, and we've done absolutely nothing.
If we don't change our ways, by the time I'm 30, it might just be too late.
As someone from Gen Z, I'm worried. I think the Isle of Man has the potential to be a flagship nation for environmental change. We're small enough that we could really make a change and show other countries around the world how to live in a sustainable way.
Well, it depends whether we want to power ourselves. Traditionally we've used fossil fuels, oil and gas, which are very concentrated forms of energy, but as we realise we're putting so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, we can't continue that way. Our modern lifestyle requires an awful lot of power, and natural resources of wind and sun in whatever form would allow us to continue a modern lifestyle. So that's where the Isle of Man actually could produce more power than it needs and export it, sell it essentially to the UK or to Ireland or to both.
We're right in the middle of a really major technological and economic change, and I think it's time for us on the Isle of Man to really get to see that, get behind it, and make sure we benefit from it as well, because it's not just something which has costs associated with it, it's a major opportunity to invest in the future and benefit from that in the long term. I'm green energy, green electricity specifically, is the oil of the 21st century. And that's something we really need to get our head around.
You can't turn back time,
But together we can change the future.
If you could create a better world
With one small action. Would you? Would you? Would you? Be part of the story.
be part of the story.
Be part of the story.
Be part of the solution.
Our future is in your hands.
Our future is in your hands. Do it for us. Do it for us. Do it for us. Do it for us.
Change tomorrow.